The night I saw my father and my wife whispering in the study, laughing over a folder labeled Trust Revision, my chest went numb.
I wasn't supposed to be home that early.
The storm outside had cancelled my flight, and apparently it cancelled my ignorance too. What I heard that night, my wife saying, "Once he signs, we'll move it all under your name, Richard," wasn't just shocking, it was surgical. They'd planned it for months. Before I tell you what happened next,
Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss stories like this. Trust me.
this one spirals deeper than any soap opera you've ever seen. I'm Ethan Walker, a 36-year-old financial advisor based in Chicago. Numbers are my comfort zone, trust clauses my daily breakfast. But that night, even with my expertise, I couldn't calculate the level of betrayal standing in front of me. My dad, Richard Walker, a man I once admired for his discipline, was sitting there in my late mother's study, using her mahogany desk, the one she protected like a relic, to plan how to cut me out of my own inheritance. And my wife, Madison, the woman I'd trusted for 7 years, was in on it. I didn't confront them right away. I stood by the door, barely breathing, letting their voices etch themselves into my memory like signatures on a contract. Madison laughed softly, saying, "Ethan's too trusting. He won't even notice until it's too late." And my father replied, "That's why you're perfect for this, sweetheart." Sweetheart. The word stung worse than the betrayal itself. The storm outside mirrored the one brewing inside me. I slipped away before they noticed I'd returned and sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, replaying every detail.
Years of Sunday dinners, family barbecues, and fake smiles flashed before my eyes.
I thought of Mom, how she made me promise never to let anyone manipulate the family trust she'd built with her life savings.
And here I was staring at the two people she trusted most, trying to burn it all down. I didn't cry.
I didn't rage. Instead, something sharper formed inside me, a plan.
I knew the trust better than anyone. After all, I drafted the damn paperwork.
If they wanted to play financial chess, I'd move first, and I'd make sure they never saw checkmate coming. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen like nothing had happened. Madison was making coffee, humming to herself, wearing my college sweatshirt like she hadn't just conspired to gut me financially the night before. She smiled and said, "You're up early, honey," handing me a mug. My father's voice echoed from the den, calm, confident, rehearsed. "Morning, son," he called out, like a man who hadn't stabbed his own flesh and blood in the dark. I smiled back. "Morning," I said. My face didn't betray a thing. Years of dealing with clients trying to outsmart contracts had trained me to wear my calm like armor. But inside, my pulse was a ticking bomb they thought I didn't know. That was their first mistake. After breakfast, I told Madison I was heading to the office. Instead, I drove straight to my private bank downtown, the one they didn't know existed. My assistant, Grace, looked up when I walked in. "You okay, Ethan?" "You look like you didn't sleep," I smiled faintly. "Didn't. I need the original trust files, the ones from my mother's estate." Grace didn't ask questions. She just nodded and pulled the files. I stared at the thick folder.
My name, Ethan Michael Walker, was embossed on the cover.
It felt heavier than usual, like it carried ghosts. Inside were the signatures, the terms, the fail-safes I'd written years ago.
Mom's voice rang in my head. "Always protect the legacy, Ethan, even from family." By noon, I had a plan.
I called an old friend, Lucas Green, a corporate attorney I'd gone to college with. He owed me a few favors. "Lucas," I said, "hypothetically, if someone tried to modify a family trust without the original trustee's consent..."
He cut me off immediately. "It's illegal, Ethan. Flat-out fraud."
"But why do I feel like this isn't hypothetical?" I chuckled darkly. "Because it's not," Lucas sighed. "You want my advice? Don't stop them.
Let them think they've won.
I can help you build a counter, something airtight. When they make their move, you'll have them on record." And that's exactly what I plan to do. That night, Madison curled up next to me in bed, her head resting on my chest. "You okay, babe?" "You've been quiet lately," she whispered. "Just work stuff," I murmured. staring at the ceiling. If only she knew what I'd already set in motion: surveillance on her phone, legal tracking on her email, and a clause modification that would make the trust bulletproof. I turned my head and kissed her forehead gently. "Love you," I said. She smiled sleepily. "Love you too. Lies, every word of it." And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of lies, because I was about to weaponize the truth. Over the next week, I played my role perfectly. The loyal husband, the obedient son, the clueless fool. I took Madison out to dinner, called my dad for coffee, and even let them believe their little scheme was working. The calmer I acted, the more reckless they became. I'd installed discreet security software on both of their devices. Not hacking, technically. Just tracking financial transparency, as I phrased it when I emailed the IT guy at my firm. Within 48 hours, the data started pouring in. Bank transfers, message threads, call logs.
Madison had been in constant contact with my father.
They'd exchanged over 180 messages in 1 week, half of them discussing trust restructuring and asset transfer timing, but one message stood out. It was from my father. "Once he signs the amendment, Madison, I'll transfer the funds to Cayman. We'll be free before he notices." Cayman, offshore. They weren't just stealing from me, they were laundering my mother's legacy. That night, I met Lucas again at a quiet cigar lounge on the north side. He scanned the printed messages, his brow tightening.
"This isn't just betrayal, Ethan. This is felony-level fraud."
"If you record one more conversation, we can take this to federal court." I nodded slowly, swirling the whiskey in my glass. "Not yet. I want them to think they've succeeded. I want to watch their faces when the hammer drops." Lucas gave me a wary smile. "You've got your mother's sense of control, Deet, and your father's temper. Be careful which side wins." That line stuck with me. When I got home, Madison was sitting at the dining table with papers spread out, all neatly printed. I recognized the layout instantly, my trust document, but there was a new page clipped to it, one I hadn't written. "Hey, babe," she said softly, looking up. "Your dad wanted me to ask if you could sign this tomorrow. Just a small legal update." I leaned down and kissed her on the cheek, pretending to scan the page casually. My pulse raced, but my voice stayed steady. "Sure thing. I'll take a look at it in the morning." That night, while she slept, I photographed every single page, front and back, and emailed them to Lucas. By morning, I had everything I needed: the proof, the players, the timing. All I had to do was wait for them to make their move, and when they did, I'd already be 5 steps ahead, just like my father taught me. Except this time, I wasn't his student anymore. I was his lesson. The following Friday, my father called me to meet him at his office downtown. His tone over the phone was light, too light. "Son," he said, "let's go over the new trust update Madison mentioned."
It's just routine stuff."
"You'll barely have to read it. Routine."
That word sat heavy in my chest.
When my dad called something routine, it usually meant someone was about to get burned. I walked into his office at 10 a.m. sharp. Madison was already there, sitting beside him, her hair neatly tied back, her smile practiced. The folder sat on the desk between them like a loaded gun. "Ethan," my father said, leaning back in his chair, "you've been doing great things at the firm.
I'm proud of you.
But with all these assets and responsibilities, we need to streamline how the trust is managed. Translation: sign here so we can steal everything you own." Madison slid the papers toward me, her perfume filling the room. Familiar, nauseating. "It's just legal stuff, babe. Dad had the lawyer review it."
"Dad, that word hit differently now."
I kept my tone calm. "You mean my lawyer or your father-in-law, the con artist?" I didn't say that out loud, but it echoed in my head as I reached for the pen. "I'll review it this evening," I said smoothly, "and get it back to you tomorrow." My father frowned slightly.
"Son, there's really no need."
"You can trust us." Trust, another word that had lost its meaning. I smiled and stood up. "Of course I can. I just want to make sure everything's perfect for Mum's legacy." For a second I saw it, the flicker of discomfort in his eyes. He hated when I mentioned her. He'd moved on quickly after her passing, marrying a woman half his age within a year. But Mum's name still had power, even from the grave. That night, I pretended to be exhausted from work. Madison cooked dinner, poured wine, and sat beside me like everything was normal. I played along, laughed at her jokes, held her hand, even kissed her goodnight. Once she was asleep, I slipped out of bed and opened my laptop. Lucas had already drafted the counter documents. I uploaded every forged signature, every illegal amendment, every conversation recording into an encrypted folder labeled Vacation Photos. Then I wrote one final message to Lucas. They'll go through with it tomorrow. Let's make sure the audience is ready, he replied within minutes. Understood. The financial board will be copied on all emails. They'll bury themselves. I closed my laptop, turned off the light, and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow they'd walk straight into their own trap, and I'd be right there, smiling, signing and watching it all burn. The next morning, sunlight cut through the blinds like stage lights before a performance. Madison kissed my cheek as I buttoned my shirt. You're signing everything today, right? She asked casually, trying to sound calm, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of tension. Of course, I said, smiling. It's time to make things official. She smiled back, relieved. I'd never seen anyone so eager to destroy their own future. At noon, I arrived at my father's office again. This time the atmosphere was different. His assistant, his accountant, and two supposed legal advisors were present. Everyone looked a little too cheerful, like guests waiting for the first toast at a wedding they didn't deserve to attend. Let's get this over with, I said, taking a seat across from them. My father chuckled. Straight to business, I like that. You always were your mother's son? Funny how he said her name, now that he needed something from me. He slid the stack of papers toward me and pointed at the last page. Right there, son. Your signature makes this all final. Then the funds can move seamlessly. Seamlessly? I repeated, my voice calm. Wouldn't want to disrupt anything. I picked up the pen and scribbled my name, exactly where they wanted it. Madison let out a small sigh, the kind that comes after victory. But victory is only real if the rules haven't changed. Within 30 seconds, all their phones began buzzing simultaneously. The assistant frowned. Sir, you might want to see this. I leaned back, watching as Richard, my father, checked his screen. His face drained of color. Madison grabbed her phone next, eyes wide, because what they were reading wasn't congratulations. It was exposure. The emails Lucas had scheduled were going out in real time to every member of the Walker Financial Board, to the state attorney's office, and to the family's private bank. Every forged document, every transfer request, every message between Madison and Richard was right there, time-stamped and verified. I stood slowly.
That signature I just gave you? I said. It wasn't yours to use.
That was my decoy signature, attached to a document transferring the trust back under my full control.
Every amendment you tried to file is legally void. My father slammed his hand on the desk. You set us up.
Madison stood, trembling.
Ethan, please, we can fix this. I cut her off, voice low and even.
No, Madison. You broke something money can't fix. Security arrived minutes later, escorted by Lucas and two compliance officers. My father's firm handshake days were over. He was now facing fraud and embezzlement charges. Madison followed silently, tears streaking her face, whispering my name like a confession. I didn't look back. Some traps are built to catch thieves. Mine was built to teach lessons. The silence in my father's office that day still echoes in my memory. After the chaos, the yelling, the calls from lawyers and board members, I stood alone, staring out the window at the Chicago skyline. It felt different now, cleaner, quieter. The air was lighter, as if the city itself had exhaled after holding its breath. By evening, news of the Walker Trust scandal had already broken on local financial sites. My father's name was plastered everywhere, along with screenshots of the fraudulent documents. The firm he'd once ruled over was now under full audit, and every asset was frozen pending investigation. Madison, meanwhile, didn't even try to fight back. She packed a small suitcase and left before sunset. I watched her drive away from the security footage, my wedding ring sitting neatly on the counter where she left it. No note, no apology, just silence. And somehow that silence said everything. Lucas called me later that night.
"They're done," he said simply.
"The Attorney General's office is filing charges. You'll need to testify, but it's pretty clear you're in the clear."
"Hell, they might even thank you for exposing it." I leaned back in my chair and smiled faintly.
"Good. Mom's trust will stay where it belongs." There was a pause on the line. "You did the right thing, Ethan," Lucas said. "But tell me something, was it worth it?" That question stuck with me. For days afterward, I walked through the empty halls of my family home. Every corner whispered memories, my mother's laughter, her perfume, her soft voice reading me bedtime stories about honesty and loyalty. Those things used to feel like the foundation of my life.
Now they felt like the ashes of it. But then I realized something. Revenge hadn't just destroyed them.
It had rebuilt me. My father and wife took my trust in people, and I replaced it with trust in myself. I learned that forgiveness isn't weakness, it's strategy. You forgive so you can move forward without their poison. You win when you stop carrying their sins. 2 months later, I stood at my mother's grave, holding a small bouquet of lilies, her favorite. "You were right, Mom," I whispered. "Family doesn't always mean love. Sometimes it just means blood." The wind picked up, soft and cold, carrying her memory through the trees. I looked down at the grave one last time and smiled.
I kept my promise.
They'll never touch your legacy again. As I walked away, my phone buzzed. A new client inquiry. Another family wanted help setting up a trust. Fitting, I thought, because if there's one thing I've learned, it's not about who inherits the money. It's about who earns the peace.